my name is Holly, and in today's video I am going to be doing my December wrap-up. So as with most bookworms, we try to cram as many books as possible in these last 31 days, which is pretty much what I did. So let's go ahead and just dive right into the very first book that I read. So as you may know, I have been marathoning the entire Lunar Chronicles, so the very first book that I ended up picking up this month was Winter by Marissa Meyer. That's right, I started my month with an 800-page book. Dang. So I am a huge fan of the Lunar Chronicles series, and Marissa Meyer gives this futuristic sci-fi twist of fairy tales, and it is absolutely amazing to read about. So what worked in this finale? Well, everything. There is so much to love about this book. Marissa Meyer is able to effortlessly weave all the backstories in the previous 3 books into this one in a fantastic way. I love how all the characters finally come together, and how Cinder grows so much and finally accepts her role in this series, and so she gathers up all of her friends for a bloody showdown with Queen Lavanna. Each of the characters' arc in this book comes to a very satisfying end, and even the final battle is full of tense action and drama. Even with 800 pages, this book was still a real page turner, and I could not wait to see what happened at the final confrontation. It's a real nail biter. In fact, that's probably why I don't have long nails. See? Short, stumpy nails because of this book. So obviously I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it so much, but wait, there's more. I then moved on to the actual final book, and that is Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is a collection of short stories that take place in the Lunar Chronicles world, and though it may seem like it's boring, it's not. Each story is like a backstory to the whys of the characters' motivations, and the end result is incredibly satisfying. We get to see Scarlett's grandmother Michelle and what led to her part of Cinder's transformation from being a burned victim to a cyborg. And one of them is even about Wolf when he was a poor little boy living on the outskirts of Lunar, and how he became a fierce soldier. And also when Cinder first meets her adoptive family in New Beijing, and this also leads to us finding out how she met Iko in the first place, and that one was quite heartbreaking. And then we had my favorite story at the very end, which ties all of our characters ending together, and you need to read it because it's basically an epilogue to how Winter ends, so I highly recommend picking this one up. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, another one that I love, and I'm so happy that I finally finished the whole Lunar Chronicles series. So up next, I decided to pick up another really big book, and that was Uprooted by Naomi Novik. When I first started this book, I was so excited because I thought that this was going to be an awesome book. I thought it was going to be a solid 5 stars. Since this is a fairy tale like story, and there's even a tower and magic, and oh, the blurb sounds so good. And it started off really well for me for about the first 20% of it, but then it fell downhill for me. First off, the writing did nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. It was beautiful, don't get me wrong, if you want to spend hours and hours on appreciating very vivid and dense description, but I did not. This book was literally 95% description and 5% dialogue and interactions between characters. And also, while reading this, I noticed that you can skip endless amounts of paragraphs, and trust me, you won't miss anything. And the characters didn't even rescue it for me either. I thought the dragon was a complete jerk. I felt like the relationship between Agnieszka, I think that's what her name is. I've been calling her Agnes, so that's what we're gonna call her now. Agnes and the dragon, I felt like the relationship was so toxic. And I've heard the dragon being like this very hot character that everyone falls in love with, and man, he was an a-hole. I hated how he treated Agnes. And there were even times when he would force her to wear stuff, which was really creepy, by the way. And Agnes would also bring him food that she worked really hard on making, and he would just throw it away. He insulted her and constantly called her names. I thought this was awful. I couldn't believe how toxic the relationship was. And yes, there is a reason why he acts this way, but it's a spoiler. But still, like, it's a stupid reason, and I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars, unfortunately. Uprooted is a very lush and detailed retelling, and while I wanted to love it, I was devastatingly bored. The next book I ended up picking up was Dull Bones by Holly Black. That's right, a Holly Black book that's not about fairies, and it's actually a middle grade. And this is around the time when I decided that I needed some short books in my life, and this is the first one I decided to pick up because it was very short. In fact, I read it in one day. Dull Bones is a somewhat coming-of-age middle grade story about 3 12-year-olds with a slightly mix of paranormal elements. Our main characters, Zach, Poppy, and Scarlet, have been playing together ever since they were little kids, and they've been making up these elaborate adventure storylines for their toys. All of a sudden, Zach, the boy, doesn't want to play anymore, and the reader knows why, but the other two characters don't, and I don't want to mention it here, and I believe it is in the synopsis, but I feel like it's kind of spoilery, so avoid the synopsis of this if you can. But unfortunately, Poppy and Scarlet are very devastated about Zach's decision, so Poppy decides to come up with a quest, and the quest is given in the form of a mission by a spirit of a young little girl of the name Eleanor who lives inside this doll, and the trio of friends goes off and tries to complete this quest, and perhaps this can mend their friendship. Now, I wouldn't say this was scary enough to cause me to lose sleep, but it was definitely really creepy reading about this doll, and there were some scenes where the characters would look at the doll, look away, and then look back, and the doll was in a different position, and man, that freaked me out so much. I really wish we would have gotten a little bit more creepy factor from that, because there's not too many scenes of the spirit in this doll. But I think this is a really fun and quick, easy read. Again, I read it in one day, and I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read, and it's actually the graphic novel I mentioned, and that was I Hate Fairyland Volume 3 by Skottie Young. I freaking love this graphic novel. It is so amazing. I don't want to spoil too much about what happens in this volume, but it's basically about a little girl who gets sucked into fairyland, and she has to try to return home, but she perpetually gets older, so 30 years pass. She's basically a 30-year-old in a little girl body, and she basically goes around murdering people and trying so hard desperately to get home, and she basically has no brains. She doesn't know what she's doing, and it's a very, very graphic novel. I highly recommend anyone to read this, but it is, again, pretty rated R, so keep that in mind. Here are some examples of the artwork. It's still super bright and bubbly, and that's what keeps me reading this series, is this artwork is amazing, and I was not disappointed with this volume. In fact, this may be my favorite volume so far, and I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it, so good, and I need volume 4 right now because it ends on the worst cliffhanger ever, and I need that volume, like, right now. The next very short book that I decided to pick up this month was Soundless by Richelle Mead. This is actually one of those books that I really wanted to read before 2018 came, so I decided to pick it up, and well, I kind of enjoyed it. Soundless takes place in a remote mountain village in ancient China where all of its inhabitants are deaf, and they only receive food via a pulley that connects to the village to the very bottom of the mountain. All of a sudden, some of the villagers start to lose their sight, which in turn leads them to getting less food from the pulley system, and they start to starve. So the story follows our main character, Faye, and I think that's how you pronounce her name, at least that's what I've been pronouncing it, and she joins her love interest, of course, Lee, to travel down the mountain to see what's up, basically. This is a standalone fantasy, and it is a very easy and quick read, and even though I did enjoy what I read, there were a lot of plot holes that I could not help but think about. And also, I really wish the characters were much more complex. I wish there was more backstory about this world, and I think it's because of how short this book is, that if it was just a little bit longer and had a lot more backdrop about the plot, then I think this would have been an A+ for me. And also, I really didn't like how it ended. I felt like the ending could have been a lot more thought-provoking than it really was. So I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So the final book that I read in December was The Curse of Maleficent, The Tale of a Sleeping Beauty. Who's this by, actually? Adapted by Elizabeth Rudnick and illustrated by Nicholas Cole. I love The Tale of Sleeping Beauty. It's one of my all-time favorite tales as a little kid. I love Maleficent and Princess Aurora, so I could not wait to delve into this. This is basically a book adaptation from the movie Maleficent that came out in 2014, so I was really excited to go into it because I actually loved that movie, but unfortunately it's pretty disappointing. There was something about the author's writing style that put a bad taste in my mouth, and I really hated how the author portrayed Maleficent. She made her such a dull character, and even the 3 fairies that take care of Princess Aurora before she turns 16, they were such stupid characters to an over-exaggeration extent. I couldn't stand it. It was really bad, and I am very disappointed because, again, I love Sleeping Beauty, so I had very high hopes for this one, but the illustrations in this are a solid 5 stars for me. They are absolutely beautiful. Like, look at that. It is just gorgeous, and there's even like chapter headers. Like, look at this, part 2, and then it goes on to chapter 4. Like, this whole book is gorgeous. It was just the writing I didn't like and how the author portrayed pretty much everything. So I ended up giving this one a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, so that was it for my December wrap up. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Give this video a big thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe, and also tell me down below some of the books that you read because I would love to know. So until we meet again, happy reading and Happy New Year's as well.